Hey everyone, my name is Mike Vaughn. I'm a writer for Geek Vibes Nation. I'm also the author of The Ultimate Guide to Strange Cinema.
And I'm Dylan Gonzalez. I'm the editorial director for GeekVibesNation.com and also a co-host of the Home Dance Film Festival podcast.
And welcome to a new Video Addict new release roundup. If you're new here, welcome. What we do is we go back and forth and we talk about the latest home video releases, some good, some bad, some awful, but you know what? We have a good time. But before I get into it, I'm going to kick it off to you.
Yes, I appreciate it. I have a giveaway that I'm very excited about. I know we love having giveaways for our fans. Last time we did a giveaway. We did a 4K of Swamp Thing, and I think that was a big success. So I'm going back to NBD, and they were excited about partnering with us, so they wanted to do it again. We're doubling down. We have the 4K Ultra HD of Ghoulies and Ghoulies II on Blu-ray. So I'm going to be talking about both of these on this episode here, just after our first title. But if you want to win these, which two kind of horror creature classics, which I know you're a fan of, all you have to do is watch the episode. Let us know what title that we speak about you're most interested in checking out. Leave a comment in the comment section, and you'll be automatically entered to win. So we will give that a couple weeks, and then we'll kind of pick the winner and notify them. But it's so easy. All you got to do is comment. So enjoy. It's a great pair of titles, and I appreciate NBD for thinking of us for these giveaways because they are awesome.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. Like you said, I like these films. I'm excited to hear what you think. But that's so easy to win. Two really awesome titles. So yeah, like just to reiterate, chime in the comments. Tell us what title we talked about you're most excited for, and easy peasy. So
yeah, Mike, I know you want these, so I'm going to be looking out in the comments section for any avatar that has like you in a wig or something, or yeah, I'm onto you. I'm onto your tricks.
I was gonna say I still have my Wayne's World wig, so I don't know. No, that's awesome. That's very exciting. So I'm really excited about my first title. Nice little transition there. I'm gonna be talking about Succession, the complete first, or my gosh, the complete series. I almost said first season. So here we go. All right, so I need to do this very carefully so I don't fly out. So these are how they're housed. These aren't my favorite way to house these, but like these are just very delicate, so just be super careful. But yeah, so inside you just get like an episode guide. Oh, have a disc popped out already. Love that. Yeah, so just again, just be really careful with these, but inside. So I'm not gonna like spend a lot of time talking about this series because everyone's kind of talked about it. Probably everyone's seen it or should see it. I love it. I think it's great. I think it's one of those rare series that flirts with soap opera like premise, but never really fully goes there. Like there's enough rich story and character and um some like very pitch black humor that I think works really well. Like there's characters that I think in maybe a lesser show wouldn't have got such an interesting sort of complete character arc. Um like Shiv, I think became a really interesting character, especially in the final season. I had to be really careful because like I don't want to spoil anything. Because the last season really just I think is maybe one of the best finales. Like that final episode. Again, I'm being very vague, but it's not maybe it's I'm trying to think how I want to put this. satisfying, but it's not like the payoff maybe everybody's gonna want. I guess I'll say that. But yeah, it's an amazing series. I do like how we do get some extras on this disc on the set. It's not a lot, but it's fine. My biggest complaint though is DVD only. I did a little digging, and I believe only the first season got a Blu-ray release in the US. So that's disappointing. It's not that it's such a visually stunning show, although it is very well shot. It's just, I guess it's just we should be happy that we have it on a home video release, medium at all. But we would love that Blu-ray. Maybe the first season didn't sell that well on Blu-ray. Maybe that's why they didn't like pick it up for the subsequent seasons on Blu-ray. But yeah, so if you're wondering, it's DVD only. It still looks fine. Again, newer shows up converted, even on DVD, look fairly well. Anyways, I mean, I think it definitely looks better than streaming. So if you're like physical media buff and you're kind of not into streaming, here's your chance to own it all. Amazing series. I was reading a little bit of trivia about like what the Murdochs thought of this show, because it's so the creators say that it's a sort of no one person is like they base Logan Roy on, but it's pretty easy to see that Rupert Murdoch was one of the big inspirations, and sources inside the family actually say that like some of the family members thought it was kind of amusing and interesting. Rupert Murdoch apparently claimed to have never seen the show, but anyways, fun little trivia. So complete series. Disappointing that it's only on DVD, but I think it's worth owning, and I'm happy that it's just on physical media.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I was just looking over at the first season Blu-ray over on my shelf, and I'm sad that the other 3 seasons can't join it on Blu-ray, but I am glad to have these on DVD just for in case you never know if HBO is going to remove them, sell them off for streaming rights to like Tubi, like they did with Westworld. Who knows? So I'm glad to have it on physical media just so it's secure, even if it's not ideal. My first pair of titles, I already talked about them. Jumping right in, Ghoulies and Ghoulies II from MBD Entertainment, and Ghoulies is in 4K. Ghoulies 2 is only on Blu-ray. According to whenever this was announced, I think the people at MBD did want to put Ghoulies 2 on 4K. They could not locate the elements that they needed to do a 4K, but I think they say up front that they are still looking and they hope to do a 4K in the future. So just keep in mind that they are telling you in advance, like, hey, we may put this out on 4K, the second one out on 4K if we can find the right elements. So don't feel like if they do that you've been like swindled or anything to double dip, because they wanted to put these out together, and both releases are really cool. So I had actually never seen these films, so this was just like very fresh and like interesting to me. What I kind of always thought about Ghoulies is like I thought it was just more so like a Gremlins ripoff, and I can understand why I thought that, but what I was struck by whenever I was watching these films, and I will kind of talk about them as a pair, is that there was a lot more mythology than I was expecting. Like just the opening scene of kind of like spells and wizardry, and like the started the first one, I was like, what is okay? Like I expected more, just kind of like, yeah, like most movies are like, yeah, these creatures like just come from somewhere and just don't think about it and stuff. But there's just like a lot of interesting kind of like backstory to some of these, and I was like, okay. And I like that. I'm a person, I've talked about this before, I like movies that have like different creature designs and stuff. It's what drew me into like 13 Ghosts and stuff when I was younger, X-Men. I like different iterations of things. So I like all the different ghoulies that popped up out of like the toilets and just all their different designs. There's a lot of really cool practical effects work within this that I really like. The stories, they're fine. They're not overly complicated, but it's more so just an avenue for the Ghoulies to do their thing. I did like the transition to more of a fun house setting in the second one. Once again, the story isn't like revolutionary, but for like a horror film or creature film, I think both of these films are pretty entertaining. They just, if you want to see like these characters or like these creatures wreaking havoc and like being like exploded, and it's fun. It's just great creature effects work, great kind of gooey, goopy kind of, not gore but goopy grossness, which I like. So both of these were fun discoveries. In terms of like classic horror films, they're not my absolute favorite, but they're just a ton of fun. So like, if you're a fan of this, these are great presentations. Like I said, the first one is in 4K, and I'll kind of show that off. So here's, like, they fashioned this like the regular Rewind collection is kind of based on VHS. They, for 4K, they kind of do like the laser disc kind of like branding. This does come with the 4K disc and a Blu-ray disc. Most of the special features are on the Blu-ray disc. Some of the commentaries are on the 4K disc as well. This does come with a poster of the cover arts with the laser vision branding. I don't think it's a no reversible cover art, but Blu-ray and 4K here. This comes from a 4K restoration of the original camera negative. It's a 16-bit scan. It's in Dolby Vision, and it looks very good. For this source material, I wouldn't have expected things to look like super vibrant or anything, but what the hues that they are able to kind of extract from this image are very nice, and just like, I think it's the best version of itself, which is pretty much all you can ask for. It has the original 2.0 audio, which sounds really good, 2 commentary tracks, a 30-minute making of featurette, several interviews that range from, I believe it's like 3 interviews that range from 22 to 34 minutes, so pretty substantial interviews, some trailers and stuff. So overall, really well-rounded package for Ghoulies. Ghoulies 2, which I'll show that off. So you've got the Rewind collection branding here with all like the stickers and stuff. That's like, it's part of the package. You don't take those off. But you can see like the clean artwork underneath here. This does, oh, it doesn't have reversible art necessarily. Well, it's just kind of branded art. You can make it, it's kind of hard to see with this glare. So here, because you don't have like the special features and credits on the back here, but so you have that, which you don't have with the first one. Once again, this comes with a fold-out poster of the cover art. I will show that off here in just a second, as soon as I get in here. Here we go. So, packaging here, disc here, and then, like I said, you already showed off all of this back here. This Blu-ray comes from a 2K scan of the interpositive. As I said, they were missing the negative. Does, obviously, since being a Blu-ray disc compared to a 4K, does not look as good as the original Ghoulies, but I think it looks pretty nice. There are still some like small minor inconsistencies, like little nicks here and there, but overall it's been restored very well. The grain resolves fairly well, but once again, since it's from an interpositive, you can tell that there's slight softness whenever you probably could have gotten a better image from the original camera negative. So I do hope they find that in the future, and I will be happy to upgrade. But as it stands now, this is a good presentation, and this does come with a pretty good number of special features as well. There's a 17-minute making of featurette, a 34-minute interview, and some deleted scenes and trailers and everything. So once again, a well-rounded package for both of these. So if you're a fan, this is a no-brainer. And if you're wondering, or if you're a cheapskate and you want to try to win, make sure to comment and you could possibly win. But either way, make sure this is in your collection, because they are really good releases for horror fans.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know I recall Ghoulies II being the superior Ghoulies. It's been a little while since I've seen both of those, but so it almost kind of had like a Nightmare Alley sort of feel, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah, agreed.
But yeah, that's awesome. And again, you can win those. I'm gonna get my wig out.
Yes.
So I want to bring, fortunately, I had to bring it down a little bit. This is another Warner Brothers title that is DVD only. This one I'm like, okay, that's fine. That is Scooby-Doo and Krypto 2, which I was really looking forward to. I like Scooby-Doo. I like the DC animated universe. No brainer. First, I'll just show off the disc here. We do have some feature extras that are nice. There's nothing reversible. Here's the inside. So yeah, I really wanted to like this, but I did not. I mean, I do have some nice things to say about it. So I will say I like the animation style. It kind of harkened back to maybe more of like the Super Friends DC animated stuff, which I thought was like a fun sort of throwback feel. The voice acting is always great. It's just the story is very meh, and there's a lot of running jokes that just were not funny. They were just grating. There's a whole kind of joke with Fred and Daphne fighting. It's the same sort of like thing over and over again, and it gets a little tiring. And all the characters just feel weirdly off model, like not in sort of like a like design regard, but just character wise. I think like Lex Luthor is almost kind of nice and a little bit more of like a buffoon and not like a supervillain. I wasn't that super compelled to the story. There is elements that I think are fun. I liked the hijinks with Scooby and Krypto. Them sort of being paired up was a lot of fun. Everything else is just kind of meh. As far as how it looks really nice. Again, the animation was really well done, and as I said, it does have this sort of fun retro feel, which I think was very intentional. So it looks good, sounds good. Adobe track, yeah, it's fine. It was just, yeah. I mean, we do have some bonus like little episodes, but yeah, it's all right. I still think the Halloween episode that they did last year was probably one of my favorite direct to DVD Scooby things. But I mean, if the price is right and you're a fan of both of these IPs, check it out. But yeah, it was.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to watch this one, but it sounds like I'm maybe not missing too much. Maybe if it comes to HBO Max, or Max, I will check it out. But guess I'm not running to the store to get that one. But a movie that I feel you should be running to the store to get is a new 4K upgrade from Sony, and that is The Last Dragon. And this is a steelbook, and I really like it a lot. Here's kind of the reversible J card I'll show off here. So, and then without it, you can see here the spine. And I love this kind of back artwork here. And this does have an interior picture. So here's the disc here, and I will show off the underneath artwork. There we go. Hopefully that catches everything correctly. So yeah, I didn't really know much about this movie before it was announced, and then I was reading everyone's comments and just like the kind of absurd kind of description that I saw about what this movie offered. I was like, oh, I'm totally on board. And it's like I heard it was kind of like a mixture of like kung fu disco musical, and it kind of delivered on that a little bit. It's not strictly a musical, but there's a lot of musical elements. This is technically Barry Gordy's The Last Dragon, who I believe he was one of the head of Motown, and so he injects a lot of music in this, and like there are like even just stretches where it's just like you're just watching a music video intercut with some of the action of the movie. I'm like, oh, this is just kind of very brazen, like product like placement. Like we want to put these like musical people within this movie, but at its core, it's a story of like this young martial arts pupil who he's like been working with his master to like level up and like become a master himself, until he gets to a point where his master's like, I think you've learned everything you need to learn. Like go forth and stuff. And he's like on a quest to achieve the glow, which is basically like the ultimate power and everything. But then he kind of gets involved like in this whole kind of like a fight with this other self-proclaimed kung fu master named Shonuff. And every time he comes on screen, it's great. Just like he's like one of the most bombastic, flashy villains I've seen in quite a while. There's also like another narrative with like there's like a side romance and like a duplicitous record executive who's like kidnapping people and stuff. So it like becomes like this kind of entangled web of like kung fu and like music and all this stuff, and it leads up to like a really like great climax of like fighting and like slight special effects and all this stuff. But most of it is kind of more practical stuff, especially like the fighting, which I really like. So I really like this flavor. Like it's kind of like I said, it is kung fu, but it's like from more so like a black perspective. But there's like several different cultures like woven into the fabric of the story, and like finding this kind of like segment of the neighborhood and how like because there's always kind of been like a kind of connection between like kung fu and the African American audience. So like I know like the Wu-Tang Clan really like took that upon them like and like adopted kind of that kind of ethos, and I know a lot of other people in the community, they kind of like also gravitated to kind of like finding these films like on these like grindhouse circuits and stuff. And I like how they kind of just ended up building this into this narrative, and I think it's a good balance. I think it does the kung fu well. It does kind of the like comedy well. It does the music well. Like I was dancing to some of the tunes. Overall, it's just like a really great melting pot of like different like genres and ethoses. I really like it. So this 4K, like I said, I'd never seen it before. This does come with the Blu-ray disc, which I showed earlier. This comes from a 4K scan of the original camera negative. This comes with Dolby Vision and Dolby Atmos audio, along with the 5.1 soundtrack and the original 2.0. The picture, this is Sony we're talking about. Pretty much you can always expect like greatness with their 4K releases, and this is no exception. This looks fantastic. Really nice colors, really great grain structure that's resolved very well. No blemishes of the sort. The Dolby Atmos track is very powerful. Every time Shonuff comes on screen, it kind of like shakes your house a little bit. But the original soundtracks, they also sound good. They've been well maintained. This comes with a new audio, like a fan audio commentary track from comedian Amber Ruffin, along with I believe it's her sisters with her. Author Lacey Lamar, I believe it's her sister, and they're kind of talking about their love of this. It does kind of lean more towards like an appreciation piece than like deep insight and analysis, but they're comedians and stuff, and like familial, so it's a really fun track. But if you do want more of that technical side of things, you can pop in the Blu-ray. You have the director's audio commentary track, which was on the previous release because this is the previous disc. And then you also have a 24-minute retrospective on like kind of like the legacy of the film and kind of the production and everything. So overall, it's a pretty well-rounded release. I gave the archival features. I gave that new commentary track. It looks fantastic. Sounds great. Steelbook packaging, well, it is beautiful. So if you're a fan of this film, I don't really know what more you could ask for. But it's Sony, they're killing it. I love them so much. So The Last Dragon, ton of fun. It's great. It's great 80s goodness.
Nice. That's one that I've heard of. I've always been wanting to check that out. So that's actually like a really good sort of excuse to get into that. So my next title is one that I had not seen probably since it was released. So it was an interesting, I wish I could say it was a great revisit, but it was something. And that's Kiss the Girls. And this is from Paramount. So here's the back. No reversible or anything. Here's disc. This does have a digital code. It's not in there now, but if you order it, viewers will have one. So I really wanted to like this. I love these actors. Like Ashley Judd, I think, is like one of the most underrated actresses. Morgan Freeman, always a win. But yeah, this is a fairly box standard film. It feels very much like a paint by numbers thriller. And it's sad because it kind of just reminds you of like better films in the genre. Having said that, there are some nice twists that do elevate the material. Um, but I don't know. I don't think it's really enough to actually like save the movie. Morgan Freeman and Ashley Judd, as I said, is a great duo. This film was a critical bomb, but I checked the box office and it actually did fairly okay at the box office. It did well enough to do a sequel. Along Came a Spider, which was also a James Patterson adaptation with his character Alex Cross, which would get later rebooted with Tyler Perry. Um, so it's fine. It just makes me want to just watch Seven instead. And I hate to be that harsh, but again, there are things I like about this. Like the acting is really good. It's just cheesy, but it's not cheesy in like a fun way. So there you go. Good news is I think that this is certainly a marked improvement over the previous Blu-ray. If you've only ever seen it on Blu-ray, I feel like the colors are really refreshed. Certainly, like outdoor scenes really pop and have this nice lush look to them. Skin tones also look really nice and natural. It's not like HDR to death, which I have one release that borderlines on that, but we'll get there. But yeah, it looks really good. It sounds good. Again, if you are a fan of this film and just have the Blu-ray, I will say that it's a big enough difference that it is definitely worth upgrading. If you haven't seen the movie, it's probably good to skip it.
Yeah, I think it's kind of, for me, it's like almost like the epitome of background watching. Like you kind of know what's like,
Yeah.
you know what's gonna happen, but it's like it's just good enough where you're like, okay, you're kind of like maybe like you feel like doing like looking at your phone for a little bit, but you're like, this is fine. And then you're like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, I recognize that voice. I know who this is. And like, oh, this person, yeah, they're gonna be a villain and stuff. So, but it's just kind of, I view it as just kind of more like comforting. I don't think it's like a bad movie, but it's not particularly good. It's just kind of
Mhm.
like it's a movie that just kind of serves its purpose for, if you want something like elevated like Seven that has it's like its own tier above, but this is just kind of like popcorn,
Yeah.
like brainless. Like, yeah, this is fine.
Yeah, and like I said, it's hard to talk about the things I like about it because those are the twists. But
Mhm.
if you've seen the movie, the sort of like mid to almost end sort of twist,
Mhm.
I thought was actually really clever and a really nice misdirection. But
Mhm.
yeah, it was a little disappointing. But it's not bad, like you said. It is definitely something where I think you were spot on. It's just that like background noise kind of movie.
Yeah, just
So
something to have on that's like noise.
yeah.
Yeah. uh I'm switching gears dramatically. To a pair of movies from our friends at Undercrank Pictures. They share a star, so I wanted to group these together. These are two from Marion Davies. This is Beverly of Graustark and Zander the Great. So these are two silent films for the Silent Film Corner. This so I'll start with Beverly of Graustark. For those who don't know Marion Davies, she is the woman who was depicted by Amanda Seyfried in Mank. So I've been interested in like getting to know more of her work prior to what I knew whenever she was like kind of getting into like sound pictures and everything and Citizen Kane and all that stuff. So these are two of her silent eras. Beverly of Graustark. It it's pretty good. I enjoyed it. It's a familiar tale, but it's kind of like Shakespearean because it's like a woman who has to go undercover as a man to like for reasons. It's like this kind of whole thing, like her cousin or friend or something has to inherit, like he's set to inherit like this throne, but like someone like runs him off the road and like has him incapacitated, so she has to pass as him in order so he doesn't get like usurped from the throne. It's like this whole like comedy of errors and misdirection and like, oh, like everyone thinks that this woman is a man and then they treat her differently, and but what's going to happen when they find out, that kind of thing. But it's amusing. I think it's like it's done well. It's not done like too, it's not like there's not too much in here that like makes you like cringe, like, oh, I don't like this joke. It's kind of like tame but amusing and just kind of slapsticky almost. But Marion Davies does a really nice job. I think she's a very convincing lead performer, and just handling like her like before she has to take over the male role, and then whenever she takes on that persona, how she kind of modulates that. It works very well. There's a little bit of like romance in the background, so um, if you're familiar with like Pygmalion or anything like that, this is well-worn territory, but I think they do a good job. This release right here comes from a 4K scan of the nitrate 35 millimeter print from the Library of Congress. And it looks really nice. As I think anyone who's pretty familiar with silent film, you know that it's not going to be pristine just because they're usually about 100 years old by this point, if not more. So there are some like fluctuations here or there and like little like issues, but overall it's a very consistent presentation. I think it looks very nice. And this does include the film's original 2-color Technicolor ending. So that's like a really cool kind of early use of Technicolor, which is pretty cool, like 2-strip. So that's included. It has a new musical score. Both of these actually do from Ben Modal, who runs Undercrank Pictures. He usually does a really great job with his scores. So there are no special features, but it's a very nice silent era presentation. Zander the Great, it's I didn't like it quite as much as the last one, Beverly of Graustark, but it's pretty solid. Once again, Marion Davies, she plays a young woman who ends up going on this journey with this young child. After I won't kind of dig into it, but she's on this journey with a young child to find his father, who's kind of abandoned him shortly after his birth. Him and the birth mother, and they end up going across the country, and they end up eventually finding him. But just kind of how their adventure to him and what happens when they reach him. And once again, it's like a thing of like identities being obscured and not people understanding that people are who they say they are, and all this different stuff. So overall it's decent, but it wasn't as engaging enough as the other movie. There are some good elements, but if you're going to pick one, I'd say Beverly of Graustark, but this one is decent. Zander, it's like short for what they call the child Alexander. So Zander the Great. And this comes from a 2K scan of an archival 35 millimeter presentation, also from the Library of Congress. This being a 2K scan compared to the other 4K scan, it's not quite as like dazzling as that one, but overall it's still a very solid presentation. Once again, there's some deficiencies here and there, but given the age of these titles, I can cut them some slack. The original score, like I said, is great. No special features on this one either. But overall, if you're a Marion Davies fan, I don't think you could like ask for a better presentation. But overall, Undercrank Pictures, I haven't been disappointed by them yet. I've talked about several other titles. They're really one of the unsung heroes of silent film preservation. I know we love Kino classics, but for like this level of like attention to detail, they don't do as much as Kino, but whenever they do, it's like top-notch quality. So I applaud the people at Undercrank Pictures, and so support them if you are a fan of silent era cinema.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. I am a huge Marion Davies fan. Like I think she's great. Have you ever seen her Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde?
I
Uh
don't is that the 30s one with
Yeah.
Frederick March?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was the one archive release. Yeah.
Yeah, she's great in that. Her Betty Davis movies are great. And just a side note, they did not get along very well. They like clashed pretty famously. That could probably be like a whole feud season. But yeah, I love
Betty
her.
Davis not getting along with someone. Oh my goodness.
They all just had a really good, or at least well reviewed biography on her that came out not too long ago that I desperately
Nice.
want to check out. I can put that link in the description under others if y'all want to check that out. If you're a fan and want to supplement your awesome titles with some more reading, because we here at the Video Attic like reading.
I'm you don't speak for me. Who has time when there's so many movies?
You're like, boo reading.
Definitely don't get the Ultimate Guide to Strange Cinema. No, I hate these extra plugs. Andre, edit everything out. Delete the episode.
Cut. Yeah. So yeah, no, that's great. I definitely, those titles were not on my radar though, and I love her, so that's gonna be like a priority. Add it to my ever-growing pile of things I need. But so Universal has been doing this really interesting thing where they'll put out a Blu-ray release, and then they'll like a couple months later do a 4K. They did that with Megan. I believe they're doing that with Black Phone. Am I okay? And so in that spirit, we have the 4K of Cocaine Bear, which I reviewed that at length for the Blu-ray. Everything is just a port over. Nothing spectacular inside. There will be a digital copy that's not in there now, but if you order it, yours will have that. So I'm going to be very brief since I did like review this a little bit more at length last time, but I will say that it's Cocaine Bear is a fine movie. It's fun, but it doesn't really change the game. But it is an enjoyable enough movie. Like it kind of hits that sweet spot of enjoyable enough, but like don't expect too much. It's not really trying to do anything new with the genre. Margot Martindale is amazing. I love every single scene she was in. But yeah, it's fine. It's a little like Meg in how it doesn't really know if it's trying to be campy or be serious. So it tries to straddle that line, but never really gets that mixture right. But it's enjoyable. I haven't seen the new Meg, but I know the first one was just kind of meh. But anyways, Cocaine Bear is fine. Now, as far as how this looks, I do think that comparing this to the previous Blu-ray release, it's not a night and day noticeable change, but I did feel like it really is a little bit of an improvement. Outdoor scenes really look great. The black levels are incredibly deep and really well done. I think that was one of the big improvements, I think, over the Blu-ray release. Audio wise, you might be a little bit disappointed. I was hoping we would actually get an Atmos track here, but no, we get a 5.1, which is perfectly fine, but it is a little bit of a letdown considering I believe theatrically this had an Atmos track. If you already have this on Blu-ray, I don't know if it's really necessarily worth an upgrade. If you don't own this already, it's worth getting. I think it is a fun movie. Not the most groundbreaking, but I'm a big fan of like Nature Run Amok movies. So had a good time. The release is marginally better, but it's not really. I mean, the Atmos track would have really taken it to a whole new level, but it's fine.
Yeah, I enjoyed this more than you did whenever we first talked about it, so I won't rehash that conversation. But I have an addiction, so I'll probably end up upgrading that. But I am glad they did come around to finally releasing this on 4K, which is what it should have been in the first place. But I will not go on that diatribe. My next title is one from 88 Films. I was excited to check it out. This is The Last Blood, and there's actually it's called Hard Blood 2, The Last Blood, Hard Boiled 2, The Last Blood, which officially in some countries. I was reading has nothing to do with the film Hard Boiled. They just kind of tacked this on in hopes of like tricking some audiences into believing that it did, especially since I believe this was filmed a little bit before the first Hard Boiled, but then like released internationally after the success of that. So this does have reversible cover art, which I'll show off here. I'll just flip it over and show it off that way because it usually shows up better on camera that way. So I'll just wait and do that. And this has the poster that I just pulled out here. So, Jesus. Getting stuck. So I'm trying to vamp as much as possible while I do not rip. There we go. Okay. So here's the reversible cover art here. So front and back. So quite different cover art, but so, and then you have the poster. So here's one side and the other new artwork. So you always count on 88 Films to deliver a poster. If you collect like all these 88 Films releases or any other releases with like a bunch of posters, send us like pictures of your like rooms that are just covered in all the posters. I want to see who's utilizing these posters to their full effect. But that being said, The Last Blood, it's a pretty solid movie. It has a really like kind of basic premise where there is I believe it's a Tibetan lama, like the Dalai Lama, like a Tibetan lama that's who is like injured and needs he has a very rare blood type and he needs like a blood transfusion. And there's like this one person that has like this rare type of blood who the people who are trying to like take out this llama ends up like sending basically like a team after this person to like take him out so no one will be able to help the person recover. So it's kind of like this tale of like all these competing factions. There's like some police who are trying to help like stop these people, and then there's like the assassins, and then there's it's just like a whole kind of like mixture of like hodgepodge of different groups colliding for different purposes. And overall, it's pretty like action packed. There's some funny moments. There's some dated humor, but overall, it's a pretty fun movie. Like in terms of like thriller, martial arts type movie, it works out pretty well. So this has Alan Tam and Andy Lau. I reviewed several Andy Lau films over the last year, and they're always a pretty good amount of fun. So this comes with the original 2.0 Cantonese audio along with an English dub. This does come with an audio commentary track from Frank Jing, and then also an array of trailers and stuff. So overall, solid release from 88 Films for The Last Blood. If you're a fan of any of these performers or just this label in general, which why wouldn't you be? Definitely check this out. There's no like listed restoration source, but it looks very nice. So like I'm not sure if it's like a 2K scan or anything from like an older master or whatever, but overall I think it works really well, like in terms of the visual quality. There's like some small fluctuations here or there, but overall this is far from like a horrible looking transfer. It's very solid. I don't think they gave it like a new 4K restoration, but overall looks solid. So The Last Blood from 88 Films.
Nice. Yeah, I was gonna ask if that had anything to do with Hard Boiled, which I think is like one of the best action movies, like period. But I know it's always funny when they do like retitle as like sequels because like there's a lot of Italian horror movies that certainly try to do that.
Yeah.
So that's always kind of fun to maybe fun unless you're expecting like an actual Hard Boiled too.
Yeah, for sure.
I have a pretty interesting 4K title that I had always heard of but never actually watched. And that is 3 Days of the Condor. And then back. So this is rounding out the last of the August 4K Kino Studio Classic titles. Here's the inside. Yeah, so again, this was one that I had always heard of. I don't think I ever seeked it out because I'm not like the biggest sort of spy movie fan. Like I think that there's some good ones, but like it's never been a genre that's connected with me. Having said that, I really liked it. This is certainly one of those films that has this amazing, like grim, gritty feeling, and it's like one of those like perfect sort of post Watergate American paranoid thrillers. This, of course, deals with the Cold War, and yeah, like it has one of the most amazing opening scenes. The massacre at this like CIA headquarters, which sort of domino affects the entire rest of the plot. I love Robert Redford in this. Faye Dunaway is always good. Max von Sydow, always great. He's going to come back up a little later. Little tease, but yeah, overall I found this really like thrilling. Again, I love that sort of grim, gritty, sort of like 70s America, kind of thrown into chaos a little bit. Like reading some reviews at the time, people often compared it to like All the President's Men, which I can definitely see. It's very different plot wise, of course, but just, capturing that kind of mood and tension in America was pretty interesting. And again, Sydow's great. I think his character is really interesting because see, it's hard to not to give it away, but like there's sort of some layers and a little bit more interesting of a character than you might think. I know that doesn't make a lot of sense if you haven't seen it, but I don't want to spoil anything. But yeah, it's really good. I mean, it didn't get great reviews. Like I think Robert Ebert was like, it didn't have a lot of substance. I don't understand. I think it was one of those really good thrillers. I think the romance subplot didn't really add anything. I always think like this sort of kidnapping slash turning into romance is always makes me feel kind of gross watching that, which this has. But yeah, I mean overall it's really good. I love that this has some ported over features. This has some new features, a new commentary track, and a nice documentary 2003 featurette. Really well rounded special features. This looks fantastic as well. Like they're just sort of like the other Kino title that I'm going to be talking about. Like the transfer is bar none one of the best things I've seen from them so far. Like beautiful picture, very nice. Like it's not like scrubbed to hell. You have that really nice film texture. Again, this movie is very moody. It relies a lot on like natural lighting and settings, and I feel like this 4K really captures all of that. So looks great. Not really a lot of issues. There's a few instances where there's a little bit of blurring, but nothing that's really distracting. And honestly, you probably would notice if you're not like keying in on stuff like that. But looks really good. Pretty great film. I don't know if it's a classic, but I definitely enjoyed it. I would certainly watch it again.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I've always heard about it. I've always really wanted to watch it because I do like the spy genre, but I haven't seen it yet. So this is the perfect excuse to finally pick it up. So excited that Kino. As soon as Kino announced that, I was like, oh, here we go. I'm excited about this. So I'm very glad that it turned out well. My next title, it's a two in one that I was excited to check out. These are two French films. This is from Fun City Editions. This is Fatal Femmes. So this has Neige, which translates to snow, and The Bitch with Isabelle Huppert. And here's the back. These are movies that are either directed or co-directed by women, which I always appreciate. And one thing about Fun City Editions I want to mention, whenever they initially do their first runs and they give you these like the slip cover, these are nice like thick slip covers. If you ever collected anything from Vinegar Syndrome and any of their partner labels, you'll know kind of like the thick stock that they use. I really like it. So here's underneath, it's just the same, but the back, you get all the information about the movies and the special features and everything. And this does have reversible cover art. So here's the interior. This is a booklet here, which I'll show off. So you get the bitch and Neige, and I'll show off. Here's the one cover art, and here's the other here. Here is the booklet here. Here's the back, and you have some really great essays in here, which helped me like appreciate certain aspects about these movies even more, make me question certain things. So if you pick this up, make sure you check it out, because it's really like an essential part of the experience, I believe. So Neige
is how it's said.
Snow, so that's with Juliette Berto in the lead and as a co-director as well. So she's her own co-director and co-writer and stuff. So her and her partner co-directed this. And this is an interesting movie because it kind of like presents as one thing, but it doesn't really like. On one hand, it looks like it's maybe like going to be like a takedown of drug culture, because the snow that is referenced, it has a lot of different meanings. One of which is kind of like cocaine, like snow, but there's just a lot of different like blank slates and all these different kind of like underlying meanings. But what this is Juliette Bertot, she plays a worker at this establishment, and it's like right before the Christmas season, once again snow, and there's all these things happening within her little community. So it's also kind of like a portrait of this community that she lives in, but she's like almost like a surrogate sister to this like young like West Indian kid who she's kind of like grown up with and kind of like tried to mentor, and he's kind of going down a bad path, and she has like all the like a boyfriend in her life, but then there's also like some other men in her life who have some interesting dynamics with her that they don't like, the movie doesn't take in traditional ways. But this all kind of leads into the like whenever this one person disappears and there's kind of like a vacuum in this community with the drug chain. So you have all these users who suddenly no longer have drugs, and she's trying to take care of her community while also taking care of herself and the people that are closest to her. So it's an interesting kind of like, you think it would, like I said, potentially be anti-drug. Like this is what drugs do to you, but it's more about this community and surviving within this community that's like, yes, it might be slightly ravaged by drugs, but they are still people. And it's like not demonizing people, because like people still have value beyond like certain black and white aspects of their personalities. And I like how that's kind of explored within this, like fatal femmes. Like she is a femme fatale, but she's not, it's not traditional. She's more like almost matriarchal and trying to keep everything together when everything's falling apart around her, which I do appreciate. The Bitch with Isabelle Huppert, it's interesting because once again, and I gain a lot more because one of the essays is by, I believe it's Alexandra Heller Nicholas. I was reading her take on this movie, and it really kind of like opened things up to me about how this is a trigger warning for sexual assault, because this movie starts with a sexual assault. It's like an on-duty police officer picks up a young girl who he ends up assaulting, and played by Isabelle Huppert, and he learns that she is underage. But right away, like in the very next scene, he is like taken to jail. Like he's not like, just because he is a police officer, he's not given like special treatment. He's like put in jail for 6 years. And just like reading some of this essay, like just kind of some of the Alexander's thoughts about how like this is almost kind of like a fantasy scenario for certain women, because so many rapists are not being held accountable and stuff. So these can be very triggering things, but the way it's portrayed is interesting. But like whenever it jumps in time for 6 years, he gets out of jail and you follow this character and you kind of start to learn more about his victim and like how maybe everything that happened that night isn't exactly what it was purported to be. And I won't kind of reveal the plot, but it kind of makes you, it goes down an alley or like a roadway of this woman is a victim of sexual assault, but even if she is maybe not a paragon of virtue, maybe she like is a flawed individual as well. That does not mean that anything that happened to her is any lessened in intensity and stuff. And just kind of seeing how the moral gray area is explored is very interesting. It can be a tough movie to watch, but I think overall it's very rewarding. And it does kind of leave you wrestling with confronting your own thoughts on things of like, are you judging certain people for behaving in certain ways and how different things should be judged? So it's a lot to think about. And I think it's like both of these films kind of subvert expectations in really interesting ways. So I think they're, in that scenario, these are a really good pairing of films because these work together really well in different ways. So you don't feel like you're watching the same movie, but they kind of speak in tandem with one another. And this release is really great. You have each film is giving its own disc. So there's like no compression artifacts or anything like that. But both films are giving a 4K restoration from the original camera negative. They look very nice. These are films, I believe, from the 70s, potentially early 80s, I think. They do have that kind of like gritty aesthetic, which is not scrubbed free, which I appreciate. They look like film. And I didn't notice much in the way of blemishes or anything. These have been, like I said, restored very well. And each film is given a commentary track by Sam Deegan, who I love her commentary tracks. So she provides one for each film. Which once again provides even more insight for film fans. No other special features other than that, maybe like an image gallery or trailer here and there, but otherwise those are the main features, the essays and the commentary tracks. But I like that these are bundled together. It makes us an even more value conscious proposition, but they're both just good films. So if you're a fan, if these sound interesting to you, Fun City Editions, they did a really nice job of this Fatal Femmes set. Really interesting films for sure.
Nice. Those sound really interesting. Like definitely would like a pair of movies that would not have been on my radar otherwise. So I love that like Fun City is putting out some of these really interesting, maybe a little bit more like under the radar movies. So my next one is my well, not my last title, but my last Kino Studio Classics title. So don't get scared. It's The Train, which is really cool, and it has something that I haven't seen it in a single other 4K release from them. But and we get a booklet.
Oh yeah,
which is really neat. And again, I feel like we both have pretty much reviewed every single 4K stuff that they've put out, and I can honestly say never had a booklet before, so that's kind of cool. There is a nice essay, very short but really well worth checking out. And nice. Yeah, I mean, this is such an awesome movie. Again, this is one that sort of like flew under the radar for me, surprisingly. I do really like John Frankenheimer's work a lot. Seconds, for example, was like one of my favorite movies that he directed. So this is one of those movies that like just completely floored me from like the very first scene. So the movie in a nutshell is about kind of a ragtag group of people that are rescuing art that was looted by the Nazis. And the opening scene where all of this priceless art is just being like mechanically, like the cold efficiency in which these Nazis not only had looted this stuff, but the sequence where they're packing everything up. It doesn't sound like that is a thrilling scene, but it's just chilling, like I said, in this almost kind of robotic, eerie way that they just work as this very awful hive mind to store away this priceless art. It's really harrowing. And this movie is one of those that like I'm happy that it's not light. Like it doesn't undercut the premise with like jokes and like quips. It's not like a bleak movie, but it never really undercuts its own value. It's a very beautiful, stark, haunting looking film. This is one of the best shot films I've ever like. I not maybe I've ever seen, but it's just like that I've seen in a while.
Mm-hmm.
The way it's shot, the compositions, just beautiful. And it's just one of those that like the action sequences, they actually like wrecked a bunch of trains, all practically is incredible. Like it's just white knuckle, just yeah, thrilling scenes of just okay, are these guys gonna save this art? I mean, we kind of know the outcome, but it's still just the way it's shot, presented is still very like tense and thrilling and interesting. Yeah, and again, I appreciate the fact that it could very easily be sort of jokey and maybe disjointed. This project started out very rocky. Burt Lancaster actually had the original director fired, which is always interesting when like an actor carries that much pull. But Burt Lancaster did. And honestly, I think I don't know if I could see anybody else directing this. Just like 3 Days of the Condor, this is like an stunning looking 4K. Again, it's black and white, it's very atmospheric. There's like an early scene that's sort of fog drenched that just has this very world weary, I mean, almost kind of beautifully eerie sort of presence. And everything about just how this is shot is just beautifully presented in the 4K and how it looks. So they really did an amazing job with this movie. Again, this flew way under my radar, but I'm glad that I got to see it, have it in my collection. I'm certainly going to be revisiting this again. It's a very compelling, gut-wrenching film. I mean, it is tense and has action set pieces, but again, that never really diminishes the moral and the just cultural things that were at stake in this heist. So I think like to have a director that can balance all those things really nicely, is really talented, obviously. And for anybody that's hasn't really heard of this movie, check it out. It's really great.
Yeah, agreed. I just recently got to check that out with the new 4K restoration, and it was my first time seeing the movie, and I was like, "Oh, this is great." I love Frankenheimer, so I was probably going to fill it in like as a blind spot eventually, but I'm glad it was sooner rather than later because I had a lot of fun with it.
Yeah.
And the 4K presentation looks really nice and all that, so I'm glad that they keep turning those out. I have my only Kino Lorber Studio Classics for this week for myself. This is from 1988, and it is The Beast, also known as The Beast of War, which is, I believe it's what it is on IMDb, because I was like looking for The Beast and it took forever to find it. So this has Jason Patrick in it, along with one of the Baldwins. I believe it's Stephen Baldwin, yeah, from The Usual Suspects. And so here, and it's just the normal Kino layout here, no double-sided artwork. This is set in the early 80s. It's set in Afghanistan, 1981. It involves, I believe they are, it's a Russian outpost who, Jason Patrick especially, plays like a conflicted soldier in this like kind of like in this tank of like soldiers, where the leader is kind of going a little bit off the reservation. He's very like narrow-minded and kind of like almost like disregarding any other like normal thought, with like just like an idea of like how he wants like his tank to be utilized and like what he wants to accomplish in this war, no matter kind of what like he actually should be doing. So this commander's kind of gone crazy, and this soldier, he doesn't know whether to follow him or like kind of like push up against him, and he ends up being kind of like left for dead, and like he ends up kind of getting in league with these Afghanistani like warriors, or like people who are trying to take out the tank, and it's like kind of like this unlikely friendship where like the Jason Patrick character, he's learning more about the enemy, and there's kind of like come to an understanding, but there's still kind of like this crazed man with a tank going around and stuff, and kind of how this develops. It's pretty entertaining. I thought it was a pretty solid movie. It's not great, and there's kind of like certain elements of it that I don't think completely work or kind of are like a little just kind of simple compared to kind of maybe more of like a complex portrayal maybe would have helped it. But overall, I think it works really well. I think the commander who played by George Zunda from Basic Instinct, he's like really good at playing kind of like a person who's like hanging by a thread and is just like about to go overboard. He puts in one of the best performances of the movie for me. But overall, pretty solid movie, pretty entertaining. This Blu-ray, this is from one of their partnerships, Kino's partnerships with Sony. I've said this on some of my solo videos, and I've said it, I believe, on here. But Sony, they are not ones who let outsiders do their own remastering. They do all their restorations in-house. So anyone who works with Sony pretty much has to give whatever they, or just take whatever they are given. So this seems to be like a pretty dated master. It doesn't seem like it's been restored particularly recently. So there's some blemishes. It looks a little soft. There's quite a bit of like noise instead of grain. There's grain there, but there's digital noise that shouldn't be mistaken for grain. There's more nicks and scratches than you might want. The audio is fine, but also it kind of sounds a little bit weak as well. So I wish it looked and sounded a little bit better. And there's no special features also. So it's just like, I believe there might be a VHS trailer. But other than that, no special features, no commentaries like there's usually as for a Kino release. So it's good to have this on Blu-ray, but I wish Sony would have put a little bit more care into restoring it before handing it off to a boutique label. But it's on Blu-ray. It's fine. It's passable. It's just not as good as we want, and it's just the movie. So just be aware of that. It's worth a watch, but just know what you're getting into.
Nice. Yeah, that's disappointing. I mean, especially when the title seems maybe kind of a little bit oddly interesting.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
yeah, that is unfortunate when sometimes they don't always get provided with the best material, but you know, Kino always does I feel like what they can. So my final pair of titles are very different, but they're Warner Brothers, so we're sticking in the same kind of thing. Um so this next one I think is one of my favorite discoveries along with The Train, which is Cats Don't Dance from Warner
Mhm.
Archive. Here is the back. Nothing that spectacular inside. Yeah, so this is really funny because I must have seen this because like the oh my gosh, what was it like Little Darla Dimples or something? As soon as she came on the screen, I was like, holy crap, I remember that. But like that was basically it. So probably haven't seen this still since it actually came out, but it's really fun. And I have to say, it's kind of sad that this like did not do well. I'll get into that a little more later, but this is basically set in sort of an alternate 1939 where talking animals coexist with humans. Yet the animals don't really they're not allowed to really do any acting. They're kind of second class citizens. That is until this ambitious cat named Danny arrives in Hollywood. Yeah, this kind of like reminded me a little bit of like Who Framed Roger Rabbit, where it kind of has this world where like people sort of interact with non-human species. In this case, it's you know they're all cartoons, but they're cartoon humans interacting with and talking animals. So yeah, it's really interesting because it works on multiple levels. It's a fun kids movie, but it does have this really interesting sort of allegory for being a second class citizen, being in a marginalized group. That's certainly something that was a big problem in 1930s Hollywood. So it's not hard to sort of make that leap, but it's subtle enough where I feel like it gets the message across. But it also is like a love letter to classic Hollywood. You have a lot of references to like classic movies. There's one point where you literally see like cartoon versions of like Cary Grant and Joan Crawford and like just so on and so on. And that was really fun. And it's really interesting because, yeah, your target audience is probably not going to know who these people are, but the older fans that kind of grew up with it definitely will appreciate that. And this movie kind of bombed pretty hard. A lot of people speculate poor marketing and also the merger between Time Warner and Turner Broadcasting. But thankfully, this movie's gained pretty nice cult following. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a lot of fun. The musical numbers are great. I love that old school animation. It's yeah, it's a really good time. Have you seen this one?
No, I'm really excited to check it out because I love Warner anime. I love all animation mostly, but I whenever they announced this, I was like, "Ooh, this like tickles something in my brain." Like I think I saw like the
Yeah.
VHS a lot when I was a child. I don't think I actually saw it. I guess I'll see like if it's the same like with you whenever I watch it. I'm like, "Oh, I have seen this," but I'm sure I probably have, but I have no memory of it, so I'm excited to revisit it.
Yeah, I mean, the jokes just really are like very whip smart, especially you know, you also being a classic movie fan. It very much rewards people that are very much into like older films and animation. Oh, sorry.
I have to ask. Okay, I know what your final title is. It's a banger, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Can I go with my final title first? Because I think yours will end on a more positive note, and it goes
Oh,
pretty well with what you were just talking about. Because I have an animated film. I
okay.
hate to burst it, but like I feel we need to end this on a really positive note. Not that this is bad, but like yours is like an all-timer. So
Sure, that's
I
good.
have an animated feature from Universal. It's modern, but I wanted to just jump in here with the Ruby Gillman Teenage Kraken. So kind of see here. I couldn't pass up the animated transition. I had to keep the kids' films together. So this just came out earlier this summer. I did not get to catch it, but now that it is on Blu-ray, I was excited to check it out. So yeah, just Blu-ray and DVD in here. There's also a digital copy, which is not in my copy right now, but you will get it if you pick this up. And basically, what I realized when watching this earlier today is it's basically like turning red, but like in the sea almost, because it's. And that's not a bad thing. These are probably like kind of parallel developed, and just one took longer than the other. But what this is it's about a young girl who she and her family, they live on land. She's like a kraken, but her and her family live on the land, and her mother always kind of warns her against like she protects her from ever like going into the sea because of reasons. Like she says it's dangerous for her, but she's very vague about it and stuff. And it's always like causing like issues with her lifestyles, and her friends are kind of getting a little bit like irritated that like they want to stay close friends with her and like be like supportive and everything, but like prom's coming up, and it's like on the water and stuff, so it's like miss prom or like ditch your friend or whatever. So it's just kind of like they're kind of like we've missed like so many things because of you. We really want to go to prom and stuff. So it's like a question of whether or not she's going to disobey her mom before she can even like fathom whether she's going to disobey her mom. She ends up like in a scenario where she gets knocked into the ocean, and then she kind of realizes that whenever she gets knocked into the ocean, it kind of like unlocks her like kraken powers, like, and she like grows into like a really giant sea monster and stuff, and which she does eventually learn like kind of the backstory, which is why I like drew the connections to Turning Red. Is like the women that in this, like the women like that are krakens, they have the ability, they are kind of like cursed basically with like the ability to like grow into giants and like giantesses, and like wreak havoc, and it's kind of like it's on the same line of like Turning Red. Like she had this hidden secret that she did not know about. It's suddenly thrust upon her, and she grows bigger into like a monstrous like being, and she doesn't know what to do with herself. And it's all about like figuring out who she wants to be in her life and like her body and like identity and all this stuff. This is a DreamWorks film. It's not as nuanced as Pixar. Turning Red is definitely the far superior film. It's more emotionally cathartic and stuff. But I do like that this kind of narrative, like this like puberty kind of dichotomy, is kind of being explored more for like younger viewers who maybe haven't always had that representation on screen of just like I feel like a freak, but like these are just kind of like the films that just can kind of like guide you and be like, no, everyone has their own thing that they're wrestling with and everything. So I think I'm more supportive of the message of this movie more than the movie itself. The movie itself is more so just like it's okay. Like if I hadn't seen Turning Red, I probably would maybe say it's a little higher, but even then some of the jokes are good. Some of the jokes like made me laugh out loud, but then there's just like certain plot issues where it's just like, oh, this kind of is kind of reduced into a way that's kind of more not as nuanced, because there's kind of like a rivalry with mermaids which like pits women against each other. That's not the best look for like a younger audience, but other than that it's like pretty amusing. It has a good vocal cast. I think the reason you would want to check this one out is because it has our girl Toni Collette as the mother.
Nice.
It also has Jane Fonda and Coleman Domingo, Sam Richardson. It has a really great like deep cast of character actors and comedians and all this stuff that are really great. And I really enjoyed hearing all of them. So a decent kids movie. It's maybe not as for adults as like Turning Red is, but I don't want to just compare it to that. It's its own movie. It works well. It bombed at the box office. I don't think it should have bombed, but it's fine. There's a reason I didn't want this to be the final movie we talked about, but it looks really great on Blu-ray. 7.1 DTS soundtrack, which sounds really great, very immersive. This has an audio commentary track from the director and some of the creative team, hosted deleted scenes, and like a really 6 or 7 featurettes on this. They're usually pretty short, but that's pretty good for like a film that bombed at the box office. Like there are films that are more successful, like Evil Dead Rises, which had like nothing. So good for Ruby Gillman, Teenage Kraken. If you're a fan of family films, check it out. It's especially for the children. I think this will be a good one for them.
Nice. Yeah, when you were saying like the transformation kind of happened underwater, it also kind of made me think of Luca a little bit.
Yeah. So yeah,
Um,
it's biting on Disney's back a lot.
yeah, I mean that one might be like something like it sounds intriguing, even though you said the plots maybe so-so, but that one might be like a try before I buy, maybe. But yes, you are right. I am ending with an all-time banger, amazing movie release. We're gonna get into it, and that is The Exorcist on 4K.
Yeah.
Finally, is it the one release that's gonna like blow out the other ones out of the water? It's complicated, but we'll get into it.
Yeah.
So here in the back.
Not with that cover art, it's not.
Yeah, it's I think that's one where I feel like this steelbook was definitely superior. But here is the inside. This does have a digital code. That's not in there now, but if you order it, and you should, it will be there. So, I mean, I'm gonna go through my thoughts on this movie very quickly because everybody's kind of seen this or heard of it, or yeah, it's a classic. It's one of those movies that like everybody tries to sort of like duplicate, even in its own franchise, and like it's just one of those magical sort of watershed moments from the 70s that really just it's hard to understate just how groundbreaking and scary and shocking this movie was. Oh, and there's one bit of really cool trivia. The lab tech in this turned out to be a serial killer.
I've heard that before. That's wild.
Yeah, and he targeted gay men, and then I think William Friedkin sort of got the idea or the inspiration to pursue cruising as a project. So that kind of makes a creepy movie that much creepier.
Yeah.
But y'all are probably wondering, like, okay, how does this stack up to the previous releases now that it's finally on 4K? So I want to first off say this and The Exorcist has always had sort of a dodgy history on home video. Um, Particularly the previous Blu-ray had a lot of color timing issues that ranged kind of from minor to very distracting. Um, so this new edition, The Exorcist is still plagued by some very over HDRing. It does tend to wipe out some of the texture and lighting of certain scenes, and I feel like purists are not going to love that much. However, the bright side of that is, I would say, like, it is still a huge improvement over what has come before it. It does retain a lot of like really amazing detail. The opening scene in Iraq, for example, is just breathtaking. And yes, while there is some color timing issues, I would say the bulk of the film looks really great, as compared to some of your older releases. I've had this on Blu-ray before, so comparing it is like not night and day, but again, it is definitely a big improvement. The audio is the biggest upgrade here. The audio track is Adobe Atmos, and it definitely blows the other tracks out of the water. So, while the picture still isn't maybe perfect, the audio is really amazing. So, it's complicated, but this certainly is an improvement on the previous Blu-ray. I think, in my opinion, it is well worth upgrading. Again, it's not perfect, but it's probably the best that it's ever looked, barring any like huge undertaking to sort of correct some of these minor color timing issues. Yeah, this is good. This is really the maybe probably definitive release of this so far. So yeah, not perfect, but it's so much better than it has been. The movie is a classic. We are gearing up for the Exorcist sequel, supposedly the true sequel to The Exorcist, although Exorcist 2 is a banger as well. Don't at me, don't fight me. It's great. So, have you had a chance to check out the new 4K of this yet?
Not yet. If anyone watched my video last week, they know I went through a ton of titles. So I needed a little bit of time to rest and watch all these new titles, but not yet. I will probably check that out this week, and I'm very excited, especially as we're getting closer to Halloween. It seems like it's getting to be the season to especially watch this, even though this is one you can watch all year round. So,
oh yeah, this is like prime time, like October watching, but yeah, it's one of those movies that I feel like it is very much a horror movie, but I feel like it transcends genres. I mean, it's as much about the human drama, and it's one of those few adaptations that I think in some way improves upon the source material. And I'll have Andre put it up on the screen, but I have my previous Blu-ray is signed by William Peter Blatty and Ellen Burstyn, who were extremely kind enough to sign this for me. And yeah, just amazing film. I am happy that they're sort of like moving in the right direction as far as like providing the best kind of picture. And it's sad that we did lose William Friedkin. So pour one out. Check this out. Yeah, amazing.
yeah, absolutely. I love William Friedkin. I do hate that he like went on such a tear in the latter half of his lifetime of just like manipulating a lot of his movies and like wanting to like change, like say, color timing and all that stuff. And you're just like, no, they were good how they were. Please don't. So that's unfortunate, but I'm glad this at least is somewhat of an improvement, even if maybe not all think it's a home run. Though I did want to know, I believe that isn't this the first time that the theatrical cut's been available in quite a while, like on like high definition? I think it's mostly been the version you've never seen before, and this includes both cuts, which I think that's great. So I'm glad there's an option for those like who haven't seen the theatrical version in good quality in a while. I think that's a really good incentive to upgrade as well.
Yeah, and you recently did The Exorcist 3 which again I think is maybe like one of the best sequels. I'm also I'm also like a the prequel Exorcist apologist. I think
Yeah.
that's fantastic and very underrated. But yeah, definitely worth picking up. Again, it's, you know, maybe not perfect, but yeah, it's great. Before we wrap it up, I'm gonna kick it back off to you again for just to reiterate our amazing giveaway.
I appreciate it. Yes, as I spoke about these two titles earlier, Ghoulies on 4K, Ghoulies 2 on Blu-ray. You can win them both just by you watch this video, you've made it to the end. Tell us which video or which title that we talked about that stood out the most. So you're like, oh, maybe I want to check that out now. Just leave it in the comments, and you'll be automatically entered to win. I'll also have additional details on geekvibesnation.com. We'll pick that in a few weeks and we'll announce the winner. And that's all you gotta do. Just leave a comment and win these, and it'll be great, easy peasy. And thank you for watching. It's our thank you to you for always tuning in.
Yeah, absolutely. Two amazing titles. I'm keeping my fingers crossed for like the, you know, maybe 4K of like Ghoulies Go to College in the future. That's a pretty good one as well. That probably won't happen. Maybe not in 4K, but good for them for getting their degree though. So.
Yeah. Not everyone can say that. That's an accomplishment.
Right, there you go. So as always, you know, give us a like, subscribe. We do this weekly. We also have other really great content coming out daily on our YouTube channel. And again, commenting, that will enter you to win these amazing titles. And as always, thank you for hanging out with us.